welcome to another one of our Woo vlogs. I'm Honey Hireme here, and joining us today is the lovely Hireme Smiler. Kapai? Did I get it right? Yeah! I'm fangirling a little bit because she's an amazing athlete, whānau. So if you could introduce yourself, please, Honey.
Kia ora, ko Honey Hireme Smiler tōku ingoa, no Putarurua hau, te rohi o te kaukau Pātitiri, o Ngātira tōku marae, o Raka tōku awa, ko Haitiri tōku maunga, ko Kirikiriro tōku kānganoho.
Awesome. So tell us, what is it that you do for mahi, for work? What's your, because you got a few roles from what I know, but yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I hold down 3 different roles. Probably my favourite one, if I can say that, is with working with the Halberg Foundation. So I go into schools and support young people with physical impairments and help them engage in sport, recreation, whatever capacity that they can participate in. So we go in and do a lot of mahi in the schools, working with our young rangatahi, mostly through from our tamariki right through to our teenagers. So really enjoy that mahi. And secondly, I work with Sky Sports as sort of a I suppose, presenter and broadcaster, in broadcasting, I suppose, doing commentary work across rugby and rugby league, so I work in both of those. And then as an athlete as well, I suppose, and just still trying to hang in there and keep playing.
I can hear some people who may not be aware of who you are, would be probably going, well, why does she commentate? And actually, what's her background in sports? So could you share a bit about your experience and your background in sport? Yeah,
I suppose so. I've been playing my main sport, which is rugby league. I've been playing that since I was 5, and grew up playing alongside the boys right up until about 14, when we were no longer allowed to play with the boys, or girls weren't allowed to play in the boys' teams from that point on. And then moved into playing in the women's space, and then took up rugby as well. And then it's just evolved from there, really. Been lucky enough to represent first off my hometown, Putaruru, played in all the club teams through that, and then progressed through to Waikato, provincial grades, and then New Zealand. So New Zealand teams in both rugby 7s, rugby 15s, and rugby league.
Wow.
which has been probably, rugby league is definitely my main sport. Yeah.
Have there been many other females within New Zealand history that have done that, Honey?
Yeah, there's actually been quite a few, and majority of them actually being Māori females that have played across quite a few different codes. And I think we had the ability to do that because we're only very new into a professional era of being a female athlete, yes, or female professional athlete, whereas before we were sort of amateur, so we could jump across codes and play whatever we wanted. You know, we're born naturally talented, so you know during summer we'd play this sport, and winter we'd play this, and spring we'd play that, and then we'd happen to make these representative teams. So yeah, I think it's pretty awesome.
There must be a lot of pressure to maintain that kind of level all the time, because I mean, you've played for a number of years, right, at that level, so there must have been some pressure in that space.
Yeah, I think there's always been pressure whenever you compete at that elite level, but I think the pressure also comes with evolving. Like you mentioned, I've played for so long, and it's evolving with the sport, because it's, probably back from, say, when I first put on a black and white jersey, I was 19 years old versus now 39 years old.
Wow.
Scary. The game's changed so much, and I look at back how I used to play then to now how I've had to evolve in my own abilities and, simple things, my fitness, my health, my well-being, my nutrition, all of that sort of stuff. So pressure comes with that, because you have to evolve if you want to continue playing. Your playing span is so short. So if you want to keep going, you've got to roll with that, I suppose.
But you obviously had a good career, because 20 years, that's a pretty good, it's a pretty good run. It's been a while since I've seen you. A lot's happened for you personally in terms of you've got married, okay? She's lovely. She's a
very lucky lady.
She's a very lucky lady. I think you're lucky too. And also, you lost your mother, which I know was incredibly hard. And one of the things we wanted to talk to you today was around courage, I suppose, And previously, before this interview, we talked around being a woman at that elite level and the expectations and some of the challenges you've had. It would have taken you some courage also in terms of continuing your career after you lost your mum. And then also, I think courage in terms of stepping out and saying, this is who I married and this is my wife. So I'd love for you to kind of tell us where what inspires you to have that courage, or what kind of thought, what have you thought to yourself, stuff what people are thinking, I'm just going to do what I want to do?
Yeah, I suppose courage obviously comes to you in all forms of your life and your environment that you create, but I think for me, being an athlete and playing in a sport all my life, I suppose that's male dominated, you kind of put up like this armor that you've got to be the staunch, lady, because you're playing a contact sport, and so you kind of you take on that armor. And for me, courage, and it's probably something that I'm learning a lot later in life and in my career, is about dropping that armor and being open to, I can still be me, I can still be this beautiful wahine in this field of my life. I don't have to walk around the staunch, tough, honey, put on this facade just because I'm playing this, sort of sport that's deemed as macho, I suppose. Yes. So that's been probably a big learning curve for me, because, I'll admit, I was probably a bully at school. So I developed these, I suppose, attitudes and behaviours quite early on, and then they've served me well. They've obviously gotten me to a certain point, but then I just started to, I suppose, accept that they also make me feel uncomfortable, because then I can't be who I really want to be. And if I show any kind of vulnerability or weakness, then I'm worried about, then I always think, they're not going to see me as this macho honey anymore. So I pull back.
Would vulnerability be actually courage?
Exactly.
To be vulnerable, you need to be courageous.
100%. I think, and that's what I'm learning, is that, in fact, there's so much more courage in being vulnerable than there is than being fake, I suppose, or fearing those things. Actually, being open and honest about what are some of your things, I don't like to call them weaknesses, I like to call them work-ons. Yes. What are some of your work-ons? And I suppose as a leader, I don't want the girls to see me as, that I'm completely flawless, because I know that when I see them struggling, I'm like, that used to be me, but I put up this big barrier. So if I am now a leader to them, and I can open up and say, hey, look, I get that, I went through that myself, I become much more relatable to them, and then I build that trust with them. And then from that trust, I think, that's where courage, and giving them the courage to open up and speak their own truths.
I must admit, when I saw you marry Michelle, when I saw you marry her, I was like, yes, I was like, yes, buddy, get out there and say this is who we are. And, for some of us that have known you for a little while, we knew that this, it was just a wonderful thing to see. The other thing that I thought was amazing, June, because it was kind of went hand in hand, was that you lost your mother, but you were training, you were putting up videos while you were at home nursing your mother, and then you were training. I just, from an outside perspective, that to me was incredibly courageous, because to stay so focused still on your career, and actually nurse your mother at the same time. Yeah. Just wondering, how you managed to kind of,
get through there. I suppose when I reflect back on it now, it became almost like a bit of a saving grace for me, because I was struggling to be, I was sleeping on the floor on a mattress next to my mum's in her bed, and every time I looked up and saw how weak and how much she was suffering, it's almost that became my driver to be like, I'm not gonna accept that. So I'd get up and go running and training, and make sure that I was physically, mentally strong, that because any physical fitness helps you mentally as well, so that I could be there for mum. So that was probably the biggest driver, is like, how can I support her to be strong if I'm not strong in myself? So I think I took away, like really I wasn't training for sport or anything. I was training for me, but more so for mum. So I think that was probably, the biggest driver and motivator for me. But also it was habitual, like I knew that if I didn't get out and do these things, I was going to feel crap and then I wouldn't be in a good space to look after mum. So it's that habitual stuff, I think. And sometimes you don't have the motivation to do it, but you have the discipline because you're used to that and you've embedded it in your life.